I'll call the December Park Board meeting to order, and we'll start out with approval of the last meeting's minutes. Has anybody got any changes, corrections, suggestions, omissions?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nobody to oppose it, motion carried. We'll start right out with you, Andy, and your project. We've had it in the packet, we've had some discussion from there. Denny, you want to start out?
If I may.
Please.
Thank you.
I didn't see you back there behind the...
Oh, I was playing hide and seek.
Mm-hmm.
About a month ago, Mr. Andy Crone of Monarch Ventures, who owns First Street Station Building, which is the renovation of the old Norlake Warehouse building on First Street, contacted City Administrator Devin Willie and myself about the possibility of acquiring part of Lakefront Park immediately to the west of the residence at 721 First Street. I believe Andy's in negotiation with that property owner and possibility of purchasing that house and expanding a development for a second phase of that First Street project. In discussions, we took it to the Common Council, asking if this issue could be referred to the Park Board and to the Plan Commission for consideration before recommendations come back to the Common Council. I believe the vote was 5-1 or 4-1 in favor of recommending to go to the Park Board and to Plan Commission. The reason it goes to Plan Commission because due to state law, any disposition of public property is supposed to be reviewed and, before it goes to the Common Council. Mr. Crone and the consultant architect Matt Frisbee is here tonight to discuss with you the project. I'm not here tonight to advocate necessarily for the acquisition or disposal of the property. I think there's a lot of details that potentially would need to be discussed before maybe even that decision's made. But I think one is to introduce why they are making the request, and secondly, if consideration, if there's plans already for the property by the Park Board, or there's objectives, goals of the development of Lakefront Park in the future that would conflict with this proposal. So we want to bring that out and include it in discussion. So with that, that's my comments for now. I'd be more than pleased to answer any questions after Andy Crone and Matt Frisbee have an opportunity to visit with you about why they're making a request for acquisition of this property. Just one more thing. In some discussions previously, the acquisition wasn't just a fee purchase of property. It entailed the possibility of adding on-street parking on First Street. One of the considerations was the possibility of land trades between the city of Hudson and property that Mr. Crone owns. Some of that's on the end of, or on the south side of the Orange Street right away near the boat landing, non-motorized boat landing on Orange Street, and with the possibility of adding some off-street parking for users of that boat launch. So there's some things that we've discussed that might be possibilities in regards to consideration of if the city would consider allowing a certain area to be disposed of in Lakefront Park, that those would be considered as far as forms of acquisition. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit later. Okay, thank you. I turn the floor over to them, please.
Thanks. I'll grab the microphone, they said. Matt Frisbee with Ayers Associates, been working with Andy Crone on the site now for quite some time, brainstorming on ideas and thoughts, and And I have the reduced printouts for you there. I'll point to the board if it works for you to see from a distance. But the first page you have there has it as a clean site, is how it sits today. And you can see the house here that Ebby Erickson owns here, that Andy Crone has a purchase agreement for. The size of that lot is quite small. I think it's a little deceiving when you're out there. I think people over the years that have looked at that site have always thought it went all the way down to the river, but it is only somewhere around 2,500 square foot lot. It's fairly small. It's a one bedroom, one bath, fairly tough looking house that's there. So the idea is to kind of clean that up. Andy, of course, has this lot that is the proposed second phase that came before you probably, or before the city, I should say, a few years back. And of course, First Street Station is now complete. The rerouting of the trail, and then as you look on the far north end, the trail still encroaches on that property line and cuts that corner, and that was left over from the previous project. Then on your second page is what we're proposing, and like Danny had mentioned, we kind of want to have a brainstorming with you here a little bit today and some back and forth on your thoughts, because we're trying to get a win-win here with the city and the parks, and seeing if there's more of a land swap that the net is zero. I know land acquisition is always a point of discussion or concern, and we want to see if there's some type of an arrangement. And we'll tell you why some of the thoughts are with the site. As I mentioned before, the residential lot is actually quite small, so actually improving upon it and doing any type of structure there doesn't make financial sense. It's a tough area, but it would be a nice piece to kind of clean up the connection between the band shell and the park down here and the First Street Station. It would kind of complete the cleanup of First Street in this area. So the existing parking that sits there right now, that would remain, and it would be tuck under parking for future buildings, similar to how this is a two-story building where you're one story from the First Street, and then you drive under, or you can drive around, and there's a lower level to First Street Station. And then, so what we'd propose is to look at where the residential property starts and stops, and what would be an ideal land, another piece of land here for additional development to make the building doable. And then, but also extend the parking. The angled parking along First Street ends here at the end of the city property, and we would propose to reconstruct that part of the street and add another 7 stalls in there. And then, and that site then would be dedicated back to the city. And then the other piece is down here on the north end, and looking at proposed parking, as you're aware of how Orange Street comes down. There are some ideas for access to the path, access to the river, different things that could happen down there. And what we're proposing there is just to have more of a large easement across there to accommodate additional parking. The parking could be constructed as part of this project also. That would be up to the city on how we would, and then just leave the trail as it curves into the site now, just leave that in place. I did print off some pictures here that Andy took, and I know you'll actually on the very last page is the pictures of the existing. The second to last is the First Street Station. But if you look on that back page, the trail on the lower left picture starts to come around, and then the next one over, you start to get a glimpse of Orange Street there. But what happens is that grade falls off, and there's trees and there's shrubs and different things in there. So we're saying instead of rerouting the path, since it's in place there, is just maybe let it cut that angle and let it be there, and we'll work with an easement on it.
Matt,
So,
can you please, when you point
Sorry.
to that one picture in the lower left, and point to your site plan so that you can
Oh,
orient
sure.
yourselves where.
yeah, and I tried to label them a little bit, but if we look at this one, the trail looking towards Orange, we would be down here below the trail, looking up at the trail as it curves up to Orange Street. And then the one on the far right would just be a little bit further down the path, looking towards Orange. This is the outlet here for the storm drainage, which is down through here. And then, of course, this is behind the house, the trail down right below here. So, And right now, that path comes along, and it dies into, one piece of it dies into the back of the parking, and then the improved piece comes down and around. And all we're proposing is that trail would stay in the exact same location on this side. We would just disconnect it from the parking, because I think Andy can kind of talk to people, do kind of take their bikes and take their walk, and then they come walking up through the parking lot. Then, as you know, there's a retaining wall here, so to get back to the trail, they have to kind of cut through and try to find a spot. So this would be kind of clean that up to the natural for the trail. And then, the complementary buildings, we would look at similar materials, and, we'd still have a process. We've talked with Denny about there is some rezoning that has to happen, there's some replatting. There's a variety of things that still have to happen to the overall project, but tonight we wanted to open up the discussion with you to see if there's some benefits to cleaning up this site from the parks and the city standpoint that, maybe we can accomplish as part of this project and part of this land swap. So I've kind of opened it up for discussion, unless, Andy, you have anything more, but kind of more of a dialogue tonight if we could.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Turning it over to any questions from the park board members that any of you have regarding this on any level of it, any part of it, and we can go over it piece by piece.
What fraction of an acre is this that you're asking?
Be about a tenth of an acre.
Pardon?
Be about a tenth of an acre.
A tenth of an acre? Okay.
So I have in your sheet, I have a little land swap summary.
Oh,
In that one, just kind of shows where the city-owned property compared to private property and the easement, and what that would entail on the back and forth. So it's not a lot, but I mean, it is city-owned, and that's why we're in front of you today, so.
Actually it'd be about 1/20 of an acre. 2,400, there's 43,560 square feet in an acre, so it'd be about a tenth, or about a 20th, excuse me, about a 20th of an acre. Pretty small parcel.
What's on the other side of First Street? What, of that house and that vacant lot, what
Sure.
is that?
So here we have the library and the police facility, the old Erickson building on here. In this particular spot, there is a condominium project going, it's under construction right now. And then this is the parking lot. It's an open parking area right here.
For Norlake.
For North Lake, yeah.
So with whatever the plan is to put in there, what would that do to the view of the river from those other buildings, or the folks that are currently on First Street?
You can catch a glimpse here on the lower right corner of your photographs on the very last page. We're down on the trail, looking up past the house at the construction. This is just within the last day of the three-story above parking, four-story building that's back here. So we would be coming, somewhat in front of that. You can see where the line is. I'm saying about mid-span. But they would still have views beyond it, and we would be working still with the city on the height, on what we're anticipating here, on the rezoning and that. But we would be, you can kind of see we're about midway through that lot.
Had we talked about using this for anything else? We've had.
We have not in any of our planning to date, going back to when we did the land swap with Norlake to get the trails through there and pick up the land on the other side of the old railway. There's a lot of positive attributes to it. It really does clean up the end over on Orange Street nicely, and the ability to take care of things on there so that it looks better. It's better taken care of, and hopefully it'll get used more, and people will give better oversight to, keeping an eye on things and watching it, just like we want to do as we get down towards St. Croix Street more. You still have all the issues to go before the DNR and everyone else to get the building in there. That's not our real concern. Ours is whether or not the park, and in turn the people of Hudson, benefit from that taking place rather than that old house being there. I've got to say, personally, I've known Andy forever, but everything that you've done well, and you've done exactly what you said you were gonna do. You know, in terms of the city, with Pier 500, and then with the old Norlake building and what you're doing there, and the like. I have no doubt that you would do an equally good-looking project there, since, you know, your name's gonna be on it, and you'll get blamed for it. Yeah. Right? No good deed goes unpunished. But no, I think, you know, and there are great attributes that, you know, the parking stalls and the like that get picked up would be. It is gonna be a change on the end of the park, though. You know, that's gonna have a visual impact.
Do we run into parking shortages in that proposed area, or it was the non,
That's a good point, if I can address that. We have been talking with the city. This would be a high-impact use. We're not proposing restaurants, bars, anything. It would be office, and then possibly some residential above, like some higher-end apartments down on the river there. But, and then have some underground parking to help offset that too for the residences above. But we've talked with the city that the plan, there's no business plan for restaurant, bars, anything that's a high-traffic, high-volume in this location. And we also talked about, if we proceed ahead, if we're allowed to do that through the zoning and that, we would be open to even putting some contingencies on that, so.
I guess, thank you, I was thinking more of the proposed swap for the parking spots by the non-motorized boat launch. Do we run into a need for parking in that area, or what kind of uses in that area that would be a benefit to put parking there?
We do get quite a number of people who know about parking there. We've done a good job of discouraging any kind of boat launching there that people would, in years past, try to do when the boat launch closed for the 4th of July. That's gone. We've had a few people over the years who tried to permanently park boats down there, and that's gone away. And now it's more of a canoe, kayak put in. And I think if we did move along the lines of improving the parking and making it more attractive to people, it would, okay, now that we drew them there, let's do something. And we would probably want to clean up that area a little bit more, but it's quite shallow off that little point out there, and it's an easy place for people to put in kayaks and canoes and that kind of a thing. But we wouldn't want any trailer parking or anything like that there.
Just to speak to that person,
Yeah.
because I have an office down there, I spent a little time down there, and you do see a number of different vehicles with kayaks being parked there, and I think to get them organized, you see them kind of park wherever they can, but to do some organization down there, I think would really help out.
What this would allow is, right now, if there's any parking, if they're staying off of private property, they'd be parking in the right-of-way for Orange Street currently. If there was a land trade for part of the Monarch Ventures property, that parking can be shifted south so it'd be further off. Part of it would be on the right-of-way, part of it would be on what currently is private property, which would get it out of the middle of the drive lane for Orange Street. There's only one issue, just to use the terminology perhaps, Matt, but talk about easement on the north end versus land trade, and maybe the terminology, but the one thing at least you're showing on your plans is that part of the infiltration pond, if this is accurate, would be on city property if that's traded, and I'm not sure that's what the city wants, is to take part of the infiltration. I think that's your responsibility. That was approved through the planning process, so that'd be something that perhaps would have to be cleaned up to address.
Right, and if I could address that, we just got the survey back from ACA, S&N Land Survey, and it just was in yesterday as kind of an as-built, and that's why I drew that over that line, because the actual infiltration pond does not go that far down, and but we would verify that with the future engineering of the whole site again to make sure. But that's, yeah, in this one, that was an old overlay we're using, it does cut it, but in the survey, it stops short, so.
Denny, is the council turning to the park board and asking for us to approve the concept? Or that we are not opposed to the concept? How would you like us to word a motion or some kind of action?
If you don't, first of all, I'm not here tonight to seek a consideration by the park board. One, we want to introduce it. If you want more time to look at the issue, have any questions that you may have, I don't want you rushing into a decision on this. I think it's a pretty important decision. I think the brief conversation we had at the Common Council indicated that, Lakefront Park's an important asset to the community. And if we're gonna do something in regard to disposition of property at Lakefront Park, we wanna make sure we do it correctly. Take our time in doing it. So I'm not seeking that, but if you've got questions, if there's details that you'd like to see more consideration of, certainly, I can always suggest that you take as much time within reason to look at this issue.
What kind of a timeline are?
Well, I would think if you come back in January and I mean, we've got the holiday, Christmas holiday, but, between now and then, but, I think their timeline, it's our property, make sure you understand it's our property we're talking about. So I think we want to be careful to be sure that if we're going to consider a recommendation to the Plan Commission and then to eventually the Common Council, is that you feel comfortable with that recommendation in regard to disposing of property.
So do you think if with the land swap, that would help as far as setting a precedent, for selling off? Do you think that'll help it?
Well, I think in regards to precedents, if you give the proper rationale for why a decision's being made, and I think the thing you have to be careful of in this regard is you have property, private property that a lot of people have wanted that's on the east side of the pathway. There's a lot of those residents between
Right.
this house and St. Croix Street that love to get the city property on the west side of the pathway and have piers, boat piers and so forth. Now, would this potential disposition be a precedent in regards to that consideration? Maybe not if you frame it in the right way of why you're doing it, and that, this would only be considered for this
Because of the
consideration and not a general policy of the city of Hudson. I think you'd have to frame it in that regard.
We had been approached about storage for the boats. Did we have any more review or discussion about that, or come up with a possible location? It was the building next to the boat launch that was being considered, but how would this?
This would have no,
But could it, or would this, have we made any progress, or had there been discussions or review of that?
if it's the talk about the rowing club wanting the city garage building at Picnic Point, I was out of town when that presentation was made, but everything I've been told and had conveyed to me since then, it didn't sound like that was gonna fly.
So would this,
But this would have no bearing on that.
would this space be something that could be used for that type of activity?
The parking space, you mean, or?
No, the actual land.
The land?
Is
No.
this, okay,
That house wouldn't suit them. I understand what you're saying, Denny, that in the case of this, where we're swapping land with them, it's gonna have to be carefully done on the part of the city. Andy, is anything staked out down there now, or anything that would be beneficial, that if any of the staff or people wanted to go down and take a look physically at what is there that might make it helpful?
Yes, obviously the city has green stakes showing where the park land begins and ends, adjoining on the property where the current small house sits. You'll also see down on the other end, that being to the north, where we're proposing just to the north of the infiltration pond, there's parking that's proposed there, and there's stakes down in that area. They kind of define the property markers, both of the property markers and then also where the city land ends as well. And I'd be more than welcome to take anybody on a tour. If anybody wants to go, I'm more than welcome to walk the site with them. I also just want to point out that, obviously I own the land right now, but there is an encroachment on the land with that city sidewalk in that trail, which, as long as I'm in control of the land, I'm not going to stop anybody from traveling on that. But in the event that that changes, I don't know what the other person would and how they would view that. So I think the encroachment gets cleaned up on that north end, and I think that's pretty important because the grade below that, where they talked about rerouting the trail to, it would be very difficult to do. So I think this does help in that regard too, as we get that cleaned up. I turn that back over to the city, so we're not talking about creating a plan on how to get that encroachment taken care of. It'd be pretty easy for us to do that. But yeah, I'm more than welcome to walk with anybody or take anybody down there to kind of answer any questions you might have.
I would suggest, not that I don't want Andy to give you a tour, but I would prefer to have city staff go down there with you versus private.
Sure,
City staff
Yeah.
can
that makes
have a
sense.
discussion with you, and then you read Tom Sully and myself.
I think that,
I mean, thing is, one is if you want to go down as a group, and it has to be published as a public meeting. If 2 or 3 of you, as long as you don't have a quorum, you can call me up and you say, I'd love to go down and take a look. We can go down there. The weather's not the greatest probably from now on May 1st, but, we're welcome to go down there and welcome to take anybody down there. I'm not saying that Andy's can't give you the grand tour, but I prefer to have city staff do that.
does anybody feel that they'd
I'd like to see it.
like to go down and see it?
I think it would be helpful
I'd
to
go to the-
really get a feel for what it is and.
Do you want, everybody want to check calendars and have Deb send out a time with Tom on his, and is it something you'd want to do after work? I mean, it's dark
I could-
early.
I could
so-
do during the day for anybody else.
I can do it during the day.
I can do it during the days, depending on which day it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, depending on the day.
see, so it's something that, get what Tom's schedule is, and maybe either before or after lunch someday, we could just meet down at the site, walk it. And then go from there.
Go from there? Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly, if we set something up, Andy and Matt, if they want to attend, they're more than
Oh,
welcome.
absolutely, yeah,
More than welcome,
yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
glad we're
we'd love
not
to be part
buried
of
on this either,
Yeah.
because I came in here tonight thinking, no, this probably isn't gonna fly, to be quite honest with you, but I guess there is more to think about here that I didn't realize. So-
Yeah, and we approached it with more of an exchange of land. I mean, we didn't want to come in and acquire land from the city. Our idea was there's a need on both sides for you to have parcels, there's a need for us to have. So our thought was it works for both sides.
Trail too.
In the trail, right, yeah. And that's, kind of the way we approached it, yeah.
Any other questions for him at this time? If not, thanks very much
Well,
for
thank you for
Thank you.
bringing it
listening,
in,
and we
and
appreciate it. Okay.
quite an undertaking. So moving back to our agenda, item number 3, she was potentially running late. What's that? So we'll move that down. Item number 4 has been pulled until next week, next month. And so in the packet that came to all of you was a copy of the budget that had gone to the city. Deb, do you want to give us a breakdown on what the city's response had been? Or the cities, what the council's response had been?
Sure. Public Works met a few weeks ago, the committee, we reviewed capital improvement projects for the next 5 years. Parks was also included based on the outdoor rec plan and all the requests that have been submitted. Dollars obviously put in to spots. The final recommendation was to recommend that we proceed with spending $100,000 in the park, which $60,000 would be part of the Walnut Street design. We haven't gotten a letter of engagement with the engineer yet. And the other things that would be included include the dog park, fencing, and donations for that, donations for the Anderson Park, and also for the fitness center, and then including the interior of the band shell that needs to be repaired. So they did make a recommendation for $100,000. They'll be reviewing that within the next few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
They'll make a recommendation at that time.
Great. Anybody have any questions to Deb on it after having a chance to look at it? And
This was just the first submittal. So anything that was in 17 that was definitely not gonna be considered will be moved out, you know, within the next 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So if there was anything on here that we missed or that we'd want to put in there, then we would need to get that added on.
Are we ever gonna revisit our concept plan for Burton Park, or is that just a dead issue,
Can.
you know?
We can't, I don't know the answer to that. The first set of thoughts that ran through my mind was that we don't have, at this time, the money to allocate north of 94, but we will be
Right,
as Stone Pine,
right,
I mean, as the old golf course
right.
comes in, what had been Hanshagen, can't remember their name, but anyhow, when that comes in, that's gonna bring us some dollars as well, that we could possibly look at that.
They did discuss possibly having a feasibility study done to develop a master plan for Lakefront Park. And there is just a number of 10,000 in there. We haven't gotten anything firm on that, but that would be for Lakefront Park.
What in Lakefront Park?
Just, they wanted to talk about a master plan of some sort.
Who is? The mayor does. Okay,
So-
I understand. No, I just didn't understand who, yep.
Because if you have the master plan, then you're more apt to be able to use the impact fees and the perk
Yep.
dedication.
To do it, if it's not in our plan, you can't do it. Any other issues without Tom here? We don't have too much on updates. As soon as it's getting cold now, I'm sure the guys are gonna be busy getting the ice rinks flooded out. Public safety met, and we had requested that they make the north side of Vine Street by the sledding hill no parking, and that signage and that went up to help do that. That should be nice. When you're driving by there at night, make a judgment yourself on lighting, because I'd like to bring that up at the next one. You know, now that it's dark at night and we see it and we see how it's used, I think we need to look at that and see if it is lit well enough. And Excel and the city said told Tom that they would do whatever we wanted them to do if we felt that we needed more.
And
So,
keep an eye on the parking situation too, because that'll be revisited after a couple months to
yeah.
make sure that that's working the way that we expect it to.
Mhm.
Okay.
I don't know of any issues going on in any of the parks. I don't know of any vandalism or anything that we had this fall in any of them that we've had to deal with, which is wonderful. I think the security camera down in Lakefront has really benefited us greatly, and that we didn't have the vandalism down in the band shell and down at the bathhouse at all this summer, which was great.
Good. I guess, if you want to go on to the next one, we could probably just kind of talk about it.
The community garden one?
Yeah, I
Okay.
guess,
Yeah, you know,
I've been in conversation with,
you've had the conversation, why don't you lead us on?
okay. Well, Erica, she should hopefully be coming, but it's a project that they're trying to set up a community garden, and they were looking, this was gonna be a PowerPoint presentation, but I didn't tell her that. I told her it really wasn't necessary to do it, so she sent me this.
Mhm.
And hopefully she'll be here to explain some of their reasons, but I guess they were considering White Camp Park, and that would be one of the number one discussions is White Camp Park. Is this something that we would want at White Camp Park? I guess you can discuss.
No.
Well, there's no, I know the general public can look at White Camp and see vacant areas and not see that, assume there's something planned to go into them, and it, on the first blush, might look like a good spot. I know since this has come up, Tom and Deb, and I don't know if Denny was involved in the conversation, but I thought that was could be a really good spot for it, is Webster Park,
Absolutely.
by the Carmelite.
Oh.
You know, it's tucked back in there, it's got good light.
And you wouldn't need a lot of parking, people would just come and go and.
Yeah.
Because, and they were talking about the center part of Webster Park particularly, or
Mhm.
Tom had mentioned, where there is a lot of more sunlight.
Right.
And there is a water access that could potentially work.
Yeah.
That they
And it
could
wouldn't be
hook up-
displacing anybody.
Yeah.
Is Webster Park used much at all?
I don't think anybody who's currently using it would be upset by the garden being there, because they're walking their dogs there, they're playing frisbee a little bit or something like that, but
Okay.
it's really not,
So it's not a popular spot for the
No.
kids to get together and,
no, we're not displacing anyone who's currently, that's their turf and they've been there for some time, and, no. Okay.
What about our park on the other side of 35, over on the east?
This is
And-
Erica, she's here.
Oh, hi, Erica.
Step over there.
Up to the podium?
We were just talking about it. Thought we could get started, so.
Go ahead and catch your breath and,
Sorry, I just came from work.
yeah.
No.
Across 35, the piece of ground that we own over there.
Right, because we had been approached about, was it,
Yeah.
or there was some activity, and that one needs to be more does that
No.
one need to be more passive
Yep.
use? So would that be an,
Or were you talking about? Hudson Meadows?
Yeah.
What?
No, sorry, 35.
Hudson Meadows?
Yeah. I thought, you ready?
Yes.
Why don't you introduce yourself for the camera, for all those millions of viewers out there at home?
Oh no. My hair, what am I gonna do? All right, I'm Erica Monacle and I'm a senior at Hudson High School. And my group and I are working on building a community garden for our senior capstone project for the Healthcare Academy. And we were thinking of building it at White Camp Park, but then you told us about, I fixed this and now it's not in here.
Webster Park.
Webster Park, by North Hudson Elementary, right? Is that
Oh,
where it is?
Webster Park.
Webster Park is
I gave you the address up, right up the hill.
by the Carmelite Monastery up here off Third
Okay.
Street Hill,
Yes.
where you would have turned left to go up the hill to the old hospital site. If you'd make a right-hand turn there and go south,
Oh, okay.
it goes back in there to the park.
Okay. Jake did that, so we can blame that on him, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he looked at that, he said it was fine,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Okay.
I'm okay with that. But,
How big is your group? Tell us a little bit about them.
so I have Jake Midby and Liz Podevils, but they had basketball and wrestling tonight, so they couldn't make it. And they're also in the Healthcare Academy, We're just trying to make a difference in the community.
How do you envision the ongoing support to it from, as something that the group will continue after you guys and continue to want to help and support, or are you just trying to get it up and going?
We're trying to get it up and going, but then this project lasts till the end of the year, and we'll talk about how it'll continue on. Maybe some juniors who are going to be seniors next year can continue it on, or it'll catch on really quick and the community will keep it up, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah. But I think if it's a success, then I think it'll be kept up.
So it would be next summer?
We were thinking this next spring when it starts to
See,
start like building the boxes
Right.
and
With this upcoming growing season.
yes.
So would you do the planting, or would it be open for community members to reserve a space, or how would it be managed as far as who's using it and how those activities take place?
We were planning on building the boxes and planting the seeds, and then the community can help like keep it up and water and weed, and but we will also help out with that.
And then would there be a produce distribution, or how would you distribute, or how would you share the products that are,
Haven't gotten that far.
okay? Thank you.
okay. Well, I guess it's a good start if this is something.
Yeah, I think,
You know, maybe you can come back after they look at Webster.
I think all the above. You guys look at Webster. I think the park board members should look at Webster. I think you have a good skeleton of an idea, of a concept to do it,
Yeah.
that you're gonna need to flesh out a little bit more.
Right.
And I think at the next meeting, you could have enough information that the park board would be able to act on it for you, and
So, for what you want us to accomplish for the next meeting, you want us to say how we're gonna distribute it? Is that?
Just every, all those.
a little bit more of the details of
Okay.
how you're gonna be notifying people about it,
Mm-hmm.
and then, what you're actually gonna be doing for the beds and the like, and then if it doesn't go over, what then?
Right.
And are you gonna fence, are you gonna put a?
Yes, we were gonna make at least a barbed wire fence. It's on one of the pages.
Sorry.
And then just
Oh,
get,
wire fencing.
yeah, just get posts and then just stick it through there so animals can't get in, make a little gate.
There's plenty of deer up there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you say there's water hooked up there someplace?
Yeah, our supervisor Kevin had checked and he said we could probably make it work so that there could be some hoses up there.
Oh,
Mhm.
nice.
So.
Have a
yeah.
water source.
So we'd have to look into that a little bit more, but it
Right.
sounds like there's some sort of access possibly.
Awesome.
And
I'd
maybe,
be happy to sit down with you before the
Mhm.
next meeting, January or February meeting, whichever works out, so that you can.
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
Good.
Yeah.
Where would the money for the materials come from? Have you thought about that?
We were going to maybe think about fundraising for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be
Okay.
another good question to answer then.
Mhm.
The other thing I would look at is how you're gonna sustain this. I don't think sustaining it with other students is probably gonna work in the long run. I think you're gonna have to look for community members that would wanna maybe organize and take care of this from year to year.
Right.
Yeah, so I can see people wanting to reserve space,
Mhm.
I can see that.
Have you contacted the garden club? Maybe
That's
they
what
might
just
be-
came to mind to me too, was the garden club, or the master gardeners,
Yeah.
or the master gardeners.
and garden club
Okay.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have contacts for the garden
Oh,
clubs.
okay, that's perfect.
Yeah, it'll make it more interesting for your whole project.
Yeah, and then they could help like get it out there and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
we
even-
have some small grants too, for different things that maybe they'd be interested in contributing towards it too.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe even other groups at the school. So there used to be young naturalists, or there were some at the middle school,
I
or,
think that is still there. Maybe FFA.
and so maybe some of those groups would be interested in helping make it flourish.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think we got some direction, and it looks like it could be a very good project to undertake.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for the effort and the endeavor to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good luck. Are those your teeth?
Oh, gosh. Oh, man.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, get too far, Thank you.
If there's nothing else, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Also moved?
Thanks for coming in, Derek.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Thank
Motion
you.
carried.